Okay, there are a lot of situations, to be fair, where sometimes it makes sense to play a little dumb. We've all been there, right? A public job interview, though, is definitely not one of those situations. But that is exactly what we saw today at confirmation hearings for two of Donald Trump's nominees for very, very important government jobs. There was this guy, Jay Clayton, I just mentioned him. He is Donald Trump's pick to be the permanent replacement for Tulsi Gabbard as the director of national intelligence. And while his background may not include stints in national security, which is typically quite an important part of the qualifications, it does include a lot of advanced degrees, like a law degree from the University of Pennsylvania, a master's in economics from Cambridge. My point being, he is probably not an actual dummy. And honestly, even if he were a dummy, anyone up for confirmation to be DNI would expect he would be asked about this particular moment. We all remember this particular moment when Tulsi Gabbard stirred national outrage by showing up at the FBI raid of Fulton County, Georgia's elections office. And she was weirdly lurking behind pillars, too. But when Georgia's senator asked Jay Clayton about that moment, he decided to just play dumb.
Are you aware that Director Gabbard was present at the Fulton County raid in Georgia earlier this year?
You discussed that with me yesterday in your office.
Are you aware that Director Gabbard was present at the Fulton County raid earlier this year?
You brought it to me, my attention.
What is going on here? You've said at the beginning of this you have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee. I'm asking a very simple question. Are you aware that Director Gabbard was present at the Fulton County raid earlier this year? Yes or no? Are you aware?
I was.
You won't answer that question either.
I just said I was made aware of it by you yesterday.
The first time you learned that Director Gabbard was present at that raid was in my office yesterday?
It was the first time that, in my recollection, I've thought about it recently. Now, was I aware of it before?
What? Are you aware that former Director Gabbard testified that her presence at the raid was, quote, requested by the president?
I'm not aware of that until now.
If the White House Chief of Staff or the President asks you to travel somewhere across the United States and oversee the execution of a domestic search warrant on a sensitive election facility, will you do it? Is that appropriate? Is that appropriate for the Director of National Intelligence?
That's a hypothetical.
We all know it's not appropriate for the Director of National Intelligence.
Sir, can I call you Jay? I mean, you know that you were there to testify for your own confirmation hearing to be the DNI, right? You're there of your own accord. Of course it's not appropriate. And it's also not a hypothetical. I mean, it literally happened 6 months ago, and we have the pictures to prove it. Everybody in this country has seen these pictures. We know Trump wants his DNI to act as the chief election conspiracy investigator and hunt for bogus evidence that he won the 2020 election. That's what he wants. He is so obsessed with those election conspiracies that 6 years later, he's planning on giving a primetime address about it tomorrow night. But Jay Clayton, UPenn law degree graduate, wants to pretend he's just learning about all of this now. Like he just woke up from a coma, got offered a job, and then accepted it without reading up at all about what his predecessor was up to in the job and not asking any questions about what that job would entail, including a confirmation hearing where you have to answer questions, apparently. And of course, he is just plain dumb here because these are deeply uncomfortable topics to talk about. And I wish that was the only time that Jay Clayton decided to play dumb at his job interview today, but sadly, it was definitely not the only time. Now, before I show you this next clip, I want you to know that the job that Jay Clayton had before all of this was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, an office that handles some of the most high-profile prosecutions in this country. Like, for instance, the 2024 drug trafficking prosecution of former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was pardoned by Donald Trump last year.
Is it the case in the Juan Orlando Hernandez case that the President of the United States pardoned a man who had worked with the Sinaloa cartel to facilitate massive narco trafficking into the United States?
I don't remember the specifics of that case.
He was convicted in your district.
He was convicted. Yeah. We convict
Right.
A lot of people for a lot of drugs.
Convicted of narco trafficking, yes?
I believe so.
No, so at massive scale, yes?
Well, you're telling me what I know. That's kind of, he was, I believe, look, I'll take your word for it. He was a convicted narco trafficker.
Did the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, pardon a convicted narco trafficker?
I believe we just discussed that. The president provided a pardon, yes.
Yes or no? Did the President of the United States pardon a convicted narco trafficker?
Yes.
I mean, I wanted to hide during parts of this hearing. Jay Clayton really wanted to pretend that he knew nothing about that Trump pardoned convicted drug trafficker by the very same office he now leads, which is also especially interesting given this is from a speech Jay Clayton gave less than a year ago while he was still working in that office and boasting about their accomplishments. Here's what it says, quote, "Some examples of our most recent efforts include the successful prosecution of the former president of Honduras and other high-level Honduran officials for narcotics trafficking." Right out of his mouth. Look, we all know the real reason for Jay Clayton's sudden bout of selective amnesia, you could call it, Donald Trump. He knows that if he wants to stay in Trump's good graces, he cannot risk saying anything that would make the super sensitive president remotely cranky. And so he's acting like a scared child who's afraid of making daddy mad. And he was not the only grown man, though, putting on that kind of performance today. Because just down the hall, literally, Trump's former personal attorney, Todd Blanche, was also interviewing for his job to be permanently confirmed as Attorney General, a job that is supposed to include a degree of independence from the president. But Todd Blanche wouldn't even pretend that the DOJ would be independent of the White House and outside of the president's grip.
Is the Department of Justice that you're running independent from the White House?
The Department of Justice, like every single department in the executive, is part of the executive. I mean, Article 2 of the Constitution gives the power of the executive to President Trump.
So the Department of Justice should be independent or not?
I think as I said earlier, the Department of Justice is under the executive branch. If confirmed, I will be member of the president's cabinet. So absolutely, my obligation is the American people and the rule of law.
So we'll talk
but that
about
being said, I am a member of the cabinet of the president of the United States.
We'll talk about the if confirmed in a minute, but let me also point out the Department of Justice's own website states right on the homepage that what the department's core missions is independence and impartiality.
And that commitment to independence and partiality is not new. It's been at the center of the department's mission basically forever. But of course, Blanche has already demonstrated that he is anything but independent from Donald Trump's influence, which is a big part of why Trump wants him there. He's already been reprimanded by a judge for his role in helping Donald Trump effectively settle a lawsuit against his own government. You know, the backroom deal to create a slush fund for the president's allies and also grant Trump and his family broad immunity from IRS audits. Today, Senator Adam Schiff pressed Todd Blanche about that settlement, asking why the Justice Department chose not to defend itself against Trump's sham lawsuit, despite the many legal defenses that were available to them.
Who said that these defenses we're not going to accept, we're just going to go with the president's agreement in the slush fund, this immunity?
There was a lot of discussion internally.
But you made the decision.
What's the decision? What do you mean?
You made the decision to not defend the IRS and the Justice Department. You made the decision and said to sign this slush fund agreement.
We made the decision to settle the case, correct?
Yeah.
Now, it's clarifying, I guess you could say, to hear Todd Blanche sheepishly take responsibility for settling such a weak and frivolous lawsuit on terms so favorable to Trump. But that's the problem. Blanche won't defend the country's interest if it means saying no to Donald Trump. And it speaks to another telling moment from today's hearing when Todd Blanche accidentally said the quiet part out loud.
Are you and President Trump friends?
I'm his lawyer, was his lawyer.
I'm his lawyer. No, wait, hold on. I was his lawyer. Todd Blanche knows the reason that Trump chose his personal attorney to be his next attorney general. He knows that Trump wants Blanche to treat the Department of Justice like it's his own personal law firm, Trump's that is. And while Blanche may have corrected himself there, we know that Todd Blanche has never stopped thinking of himself as Trump's personal attorney, even when he started working at the Department of Justice. Just consider this moment from Todd Blanche's first confirmation hearing to be Deputy Attorney General just 1 month into Trump's second term.
Are you still Donald Trump's lawyer?
I mean, yes, my attorney-client relationship with President Trump remains. Yes.
People like Todd Blanche and Jay Clayton understand what Trump wants from them. And they seem very willing to embarrass themselves and sully their reputations and play dumb to give it to him to keep these jobs. Are these jobs so great? That's always my question. But the big question is really, what happens now? What happens from here?